What are we even filming here today?
It's called Hitachi, Action for a Sustainable Future. Should we move on?
Hello and welcome back to the People of Hitachi podcast. Today we have a very exciting episode. We are joined by some incredible speakers and we are going to be looking at the creation of this year's brand campaign at Hitachi. So before we get started, I think it would be great if we could do some introductions. So if we maybe start with Ellie from Hitachi, could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Ellie and I am responsible for all of our digital communications from Hitachi Europe.
Amazing. And Jay from Mamapool.
Hello, my name is Jason Mendez. I am creative director of Mamapool. My role is to oversee the creative output of this campaign.
Thank you. And last but not least, Cameron, who is joining us remotely from Vancouver today. Could you please introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Cameron, director. Currently in Vancouver, live in LA.
Amazing. It's so great to have everyone here today from all different areas of this creative process. So let's dive in, let's peel back the layers of this film and learn more. I think it would be great to kind of kick off by understanding the sort of initial stages of this campaign. You know, we had a challenge to change Hitachi's brand perception this year. Ellie, could you maybe tap into how we did this, how we worked closely with the agency when briefing them on this campaign?
Yeah, so with Hitachi, we have lots of people know the brand. They don't necessarily know exactly what we do still. So people are still associating us with a lot of our divested businesses, thinking of us as a consumer goods company. So we went out to Mamapool and gave them the problem that people aren't thinking of us as a green digital business, and we want them to change that. So they came up with a couple of ways that we could do that with our campaign, and we wanted to keep it a really loose brief so that we could get lots of creative direction and how best we could tell that story.
Thanks, Ellie. And it's really interesting to kind of see how the journey works here and how, you know, we went to Mamapool, the creative agency. And Jay, I wonder if you could kind of describe what your thoughts were when we initially came to you with this brief, particularly in terms of shifting our brand perspective.
I think it's really important to first say that it was a great brief with a really clear and concise problem to solve. And that's a dream for an agency to start with. It's a great starting point for us to approach, problem solving. I think at the heart of approaching the brief to try and solve the problem, when we scratched the surface and got deeper into the action that Hitachi were taking to help solve sustainability in the world, it was really interesting to us. It wasn't just lip service. There was a huge amount of action that had been taken already, as opposed to other companies who are just talking about what they were going to do. So that word action was really quite a powerful word for us to springboard off. Now, when you marry that up with the medium, which is film, you get action film, and you start to explore the differences between what we traditionally know as a Hollywood action movie and what Hitachi's action movie would look like. You start with the fact that they both, at the heart of the story, are trying to save the world. And that's where the similarities end, because in Hitachi's action film, there are no car chases, there's no explosions, there's no bad guys. It's not one or two heroes trying to save the world. It's 300,000 people trying to help sustainability in the world. So that was a really interesting way to approach the brief, that juxtaposition between the two. And that's really where we started.
It's really interesting to hear how it's kind of all come together. And Cameron, maybe this is a question for you, and maybe from an external point of view, as an LA director, How did you initially perceive the Hitachi brand, and how has that changed since, you've supported in creating this film?
Yeah, like Ellie was saying, I think I mainly knew it for consumer goods, and so I didn't understand, didn't know about the mission at the heart of the company. But obviously, that's changed, having worked with all the wonderful people there, and as we put the film together. So now I absolutely understand the mission that Hitachi has, and think it's amazing. I think a lot of companies should follow suit.
We absolutely are on a mission, we are on a journey. And I guess looking at the kind of key themes to this campaign, Ellie. So the key theme was Achieve Together. Could you tell us why we chose this theme and how does it connect to Hitachi's future communication activities? Where do we want to go from here?
So achievement was a really key theme for us. As Jay said, as other companies are talking, we are actually doing action, and we're quietly getting on with everything. But throughout Hitachi's 114-year legacy, we've already achieved many things. The first product is the 5 horsepower electric motor. We've achieved battery trains. We've achieved the North Sea Link, and actually being able to highlight those and tell people about them. But as well as use and achieve as a nod to all the other innovations that we need to do to achieve that sustainable future and the ambitious net zero goals that have been set. And really the reason that we put that together is that Achieve Together theme is because not one company can do that alone. Not one company can achieve a sustainable future. And it's only when everybody comes together with pooling investment, sharing expertise, benefiting from the breadth of Hitachi, but with maybe governments and cities, that we can actually see progress towards net zero. So that was why it was such a key platform for us to use. And there's also many ways that can be interpreted and used in future communications. So achieving together, as Jay said, there's not just one action hero. It's 300,000 of our employees all working towards that mission. It's how we're achieving with our customers. It's how we're achieving with our suppliers, our partners, to really get that. And it also just gave us this platform to really communicate our message. So outside of Action Movie, we've got other communications talking about how we're achieving electrification, how we're achieving clean energy sharing. There's lots of ways that we can really keep using that to communicate our efforts. And actually, when we look back at our campaigns, Achieve was already embedded in a lot of the communication we were already using. It felt a very natural fit for us to use in this campaign.
I think the Achieve theme comes across so well in the film. And maybe if we take a step back to look more at the creative vision and the key elements within the film, maybe Cameron, you could kind of touch on how it all came together.
Obviously, it was amazing when Jay approached me with the script, and we've worked together before, and I had a lot of fun, and I just love that kind of like working with Jay, because there's this creative sort of freedom of collaboration where you can just say anything to each other and figure it out. So when I got the script, I was like, obviously blown away that this was a B2B campaign with such a great idea at its heart. Obviously brave of Hitachi to kind of embrace this type of storytelling, because that's going to cut through a lot better than the majority of stuff on television.
It's having that emotional connection with your audience, isn't it? Jay, this might be a great question for you. Why is it so important to have that emotional approach in B2B advertising?
Well, it's incredibly important. I mean, I think it's important in any form of communication, whether you're talking to a child or you're talking to a government about huge infrastructure. Emotion is really important to connect with people. I think it's Walt Disney who famously said, entertainment comes before education. And what he means by that is you have to emotionally connect with people to pull them in before you can push information. I think if we take, recall our school, being at school, to take a more literal example of that, our best teachers understood that inherently. They were able to emotionally connect with you, and it's a lot easier. It's a much easier way to learn. So I think and that's no different when it comes to B2B. I think we have a very funny thing within our industry. Just to build on what Cameron was was saying, and that is when we hear the three letters B2B or two letters and one number B2B, we think that suddenly we have to be very, very serious and we have to be very businesslike. And I think at the heart of it, business people are humans and humans engage with emotion. So I think it's really, really important. I also believe, at the heart of this message, which is sustainability, this space as well, Cameron, as you would well know, sustainability space is incredibly vanilla in terms of communication. And what I mean by that is they tend to use shock tactics to talk about the doom and gloom of the state of the world. And what happens there is you end up in a perpetual doom loop with no hope. And I think if we are not, as marketeers, and particularly with Hitachi, who have achieved a lot of sustainability missions already, if you are not giving hope, then who is going to invest in the infrastructure to be able to help the sustainability issue we have in the world? And that's what the amazing thing we thought from that, from Hitachi's perspective. So yeah, I think, emotion is incredibly important.
And I think just built on that, we sat down with Mama Pool at the start and looked at all of our previous campaigns, and they were all information-led, trying to educate people. And really, like Jay said, yes, it's B2B advertising, but at the heart of those decisions are still people, and we need to get that emotional connection with them. And when we're talking to people within Hitachi about why they're so passionate about what they do, most of them are saying, because I want to leave a good legacy for my children, or I want to leave something behind. And that's an incredibly emotional pull. And to try and get that within a couple of minutes of a film to really, really bring that home for people is difficult, but also it's such a strong message, more than just educating with everyone knows we need to do it, but it's having that why is really important.
I think also, when you're in a boardroom, and you're talking business, it is a very serious affair. But when you come to communication, it's a totally different objective. So you have to make that separation between the two. Also, part of emotion is a use of comedy in terms of connecting with people, because humor is the closest distance between two people, and it's a very powerful way to connect.
When it came to casting the actors, was that Cameron or was that yourself, Jay?
Well, casting, I mean, there's probably two elements to that question. I'm going to defer the second half to Cameron. But what I will say is that, as creative director, it's my responsibility to cast the right director for the project. And we just happened, I've worked with Cameron before, we just happened to have one of the greatest talent directors on the planet. And so, after we've profiled that person, I then trust explicitly in Cameron to cast the actors that are going to be right for this project. And so I think, that's maybe where my casting comes from choosing Cameron. Cameron's casting then comes in choosing the actors. So
yeah, casting's one of the hardest parts of putting, a film like this together, because so much relies on them. If we talk about the action hero and how it means to different markets, like we were talking about before, like it has to telegraph so quickly. We have to understand in the first 3 seconds that this is someone who's an action hero, who's probably shot a lot of movies in the 90s. So there's so that all the different audiences can understand who he is and go from there. If he didn't come across like an action hero, then the whole thing would have fizzled out. But yeah, so we stress about casting a lot, and we were fortunate to find 2 really great actors who had a great chemistry, and we could build upon that, which was nice.
I think Cameron's been really modest there, to be honest, because it was I don't get a chance to go into the casting suite very often, but I did on this project. And actually, Cameron was, in a very short space of time, because these actors are coming into a white room, there is zero environment, and there's a couple of lines that they have to deliver. And it was incredible to see how Cameron could sift through exactly what he was looking for in a short space of time by giving them very, very specific targets and changing their direction on a dime and seeing how they would react under pressure. Because as Cameron said to me, what I'm looking for is for someone that can act under pressure. Because when we get on set, there's not going to be two people sitting and looking at actors. And believe it or not, some of them freeze up as well. There's going to be 50 people on set. So Cameron was really looking for not only talent, but also the ability to take direction and act under pressure. And I thought that was really fascinating.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find vulnerability. Like, it's easy to do a parody of an action hero. Like, here's a tough guy with maybe a weird, vague accent from some Eastern European country, or just like acting very like tough the whole time. But what we wanted was vulnerability. So underlying surface, what's under the surface? What's the motivation behind it? Like, what's the backstory? Same thing for the Hitachi rep played by Zora. But with the action hero, we wanted him to kind of be a little bit lost in the world, still trying to hold on to the past, which is, what a lot of people do. But then as the story unfolds, his vulnerability comes out. You know what I mean? He doesn't know where he is. He loses his place, and he's sort of in a whirlwind. And that's kind of very hard to play, like the subtext, what's underneath the character. But I thought they did a great job, especially as we were filming everything right in front of a screen. So the connection between the two of them was probably the most important part of making the whole thing a success.
And there's a moment in the film when we're shooting the cardiac vest where our action hero suddenly realizes that this is not his type of action movie. And that's a really, really key point to get that right. You've gone from this tough guy to what Cameron is talking about, this vulnerable, Christ, I don't have a place in this world.
There needed to be drama in the spot. You know what I mean? Like, I always talk about drama in comedy. Like, there needs to be tension. There needs to be, there's an old saying, like, comedy is always at the expense of someone else. And I think, initially when we were talking about the script going back and forth, it was very action hero dominant. Do you know what I mean? And I think we needed to kind of like take his part down and raise up the Hitachi rep so that we could have that moment where their roles could have like, I don't know how to describe it, but she takes over. Zora takes over in the spot, and I love that moment. I love that moment where she picks him up off the ground, and there's a classic scene in a lot of action films where someone reaches down and saves someone. You know what I mean? And pulls them up and puts them on their shoulder, and it's like it's one person, it's one action hero who, like, Arnie puts someone over the shoulder. Away we go. We're going to go save the world. Whereas here, it was about Hitachi pulling up this, the rep pulling up him and saying, look, we need to do this together. Let's go on. It's not about one person. You can still save the world if you join our mission or join the mission or just believe in the mission. So that kind of moment between them was really nice.
They worked so well together, the complete opposite, but just came together so well. And Ellie, I was going to ask you, Zora embodied the Hitachi employee. Why was she such a good fit for this part?
Well, we felt a lot of responsibility casting Zora. We had to find someone that authentically felt like part of Hitachi. Just as much as this was an external video, there were lots of people within Hitachi watching it, and they needed to feel like they could be Zora. So we really kind of went back and forth, and as soon as we saw Zora's tapes, we knew that she would be the best actor for Hitachi rep. She had that she really embodied our values. She didn't feel like she was mocking the action hero. She was calm. She had that comedy value, but it was always that they were going to finish that together. And just because he wasn't kind of going with what she expected, that she was going to leave him there. So that scene with the Global Logic vest that Jay was referencing is definitely my favourite. You really see that power balancing back out. And where he kind of started and he looked as the star of the show, she finished that as the star. And yeah, having that responsibility of casting someone to represent 300,000 employees is a really big responsibility. But since we've released the film, so many employees have come up to us and asked where we found her, what she was like. And that's who they've kind of felt drawn to. So I feel like we did a good job with that.
I also love that like she was able to just look at him and just go like, what an idiot. But like not saying that out loud, but just in the eyes, and we embraced that. Do you know what I mean? Like she was able to do that, and I know when I say that, I know that sounds harsh, but she just does it in a really wonderful way where it softens it, and it's just like it's what we're all thinking. Do you know what I mean? Like what's going on?
I think it's important to add as well that comedy is a tricky space, and the tone of voice of comedy is very wide. For instance, if you got a different director onto this, you might have ended up with something slapstick, which is not Hitachi in that comedy. It might have been funny, but it's certainly not Hitachi. So getting the tone of voice was imperative. And I think that's what Cameron brought to it, is understanding that comedy inherently comes from a situation rather than hamming it up or slapstick. It actually comes from the juxtaposition between two extremes.
When Cameron came on and really kind of added his take on the script, and just those little tiny bits really made you feel warmth towards the characters. Like my favourite bit is in one of the first scenes with the train, and the action hero stood there and he's kind of commanding the scene, and then you just see the makeup artist come in, and it just really brings everything back down to earth. And those little tweaks just really brought that humour into it in such a clever way that really made the script.
There has to be drama. Yeah, that's lovely. I love that moment too. It also reminded me of like it's very full at the beginning, right? There's a lot of people on the stage. There's all the background crew and cast that we see, and then we strip that away. We stripped that away as we went through the story, so it ends up with just them, which I loved, and so it becomes very dramatic, and it's just like I never was asking anyone to be funny, like to Jay was saying, to ham it up.
You got the perfect level of humour throughout the film. It was just brilliant. So Jay, maybe you could tell us a bit about where we filmed the film and a bit about the production behind it.
Yeah, I think, given the fact that sustainability was at the heart of the message in this film, we shot this using virtual production, which is a relatively new technique in the film industry. It involves using a volume screen, 30 feet high and 60 feet wide, so it's huge, it's indoors. And what you can do is you can put images anywhere in the world onto that screen. And with the aid of props in front of that screen, the minute you turn the camera on, you can feel like you're anywhere in the world, which means that we were able to shoot this in one location. Now, imagine the amount of carbon we would have used if we were flying all over the world to go to every single location. It would have been pretty irresponsible and hypocritical, given the fact we were doing sustainability. So going for the opening scene, flying to South America to shoot that opening scene, then flying back to the UK to shoot wind farms in a helicopter over the North Sea, and everything in between. So I think, given that Hitachi are doing everything to save carbon, it was a natural thing to do to make this production virtual production.
Yeah, it was absolutely incredible how it all came together. Ellie, what was your favourite part in the making of this film?
My favourite part was generally really working as a global team and coming together with teams from Europe, America, Japan, and seeing how the idea really evolved. When Mama Pool first pitched it to us, it was, it was really in its infancy, and the characters weren't defined. There was lots of movement with what projects we were going to include, essentially how the story could end. And there was back and forth on kind of like what might seem the most minute details, but really made a difference. Things like the Hitachi rep offering her hand to the action hero at the end. That was something that wasn't necessarily in the first script, and really seeing how the film took its turn But also the main part for me was being part of the team at Hitachi that really took a risk with our B2B storytelling. As I said earlier, we've always done a lot more kind of educational, fact-based storytelling, and really taking a risk in using humour, pulling on people's emotion. It felt like a really exciting project to be part of, and I really hope our future communications we can continue to build on that.
And Cameron, the same question goes to you. You know, is there anything that stands out for you?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things, but I think one thing I really took away from it was just like, off camera, behind the scenes, the dynamic between, Jay, Mamapul, Hitachi, and then everyone's like absolute sort of like belief in it. It was pretty powerful because everyone sort of felt genuinely like they believed in this mission. Because Hitachi has such an amazing foundation to build the story on, like you can really see that in the people who work for the company, and then obviously Jay and the team at the agency who have taken the idea and wrote it. So I just felt that energy was palpable. I really enjoyed it.
And Jay, is there a favourite moment for you from the creation of this film?
What was really interesting from this project that I experienced was, first of all, Hitachi hasn't done something like this before. Not only is it uncommon in the B2B space, but Hitachi has never done anything like this before. And that leap of faith to trust us was huge, particularly going into the unknown. So let me paint the picture a little bit. On set, there was probably about 50 people. And there is, as Cameron said, there's a lot of pressure on set to be able to deliver. And I think it goes without saying that everyone from Hitachi and Cameron and everyone on set, the objective was, without even ever speaking about it, was to keep calm and carry on. And Cameron was actually quite instrumental in that. I'd never seen this before, but in between scenes, Cameron would play music really loud. And it wasn't just music, like just popular culture music to try and keep the mood going, which is probably one way to do it. But what Cameron did was played music that was very appropriate for each scene. So, for instance, when we shot the jungle scene, he started playing audio tracks of animal noises in the jungle, and then he started playing Lion King music. and I think I'd never experienced that before. I think that was a really interesting way to take the pressure off everyone, and that goes a long way to getting a great result. And I think he inherently knows that. So, I think that was a really interesting aspect.
I think the whole project, we were very tight on time. We wanted to get things live before New York Climate Week, before key events like COP as well. So we didn't have that long to make some decisions. And when you had to factor in the time zones, there were lots of late nights, early mornings from people on the team. And really, I think everyone was just so excited for this project to happen and see the film. And even teams that weren't directly involved were always asking, when's the film ready? When can we share it? And within Hitachi, by taking that risk and taking that leap of faith, there was a real excitement to see the final product.
I was going to say there was just a unique buzz around this film, both internally with the employees and also externally. And I think I'd really love to end this podcast by asking Ellie you a question. And how do you hope this video will impact people's emotional connection to the Hitachi brand?
It's a big question. I think generally the Hitachi brand, as I said at the start, we've been seen as a consumer goods company. We've been seen as, we've done so much over the years, and we're not always the best at shouting about some of our achievements. Like, we've just recently completed a trial with diesel trains and actually putting batteries in them. And every day things like this is happening across the Hitachi group. And I really loved this. Not only was it a creative way of telling our story, but also we really got to shine a light on some of the really impressive products that we've got and projects that we're involved in, and really show the Hitachi business. We've got like anything from a cardiac vest to connecting wind farms to tri-mode trains in the film, and that's just in a 2-minute long film. So I really hope we take this blueprint and continue to innovate in our communications as well as within our business, and really try and find creative ways of just keeping to tell that story and just connect with our audience.
And engagement-wise, can you tell us how well the film's doing at the moment?
Yeah, so it's still quite early to say in terms of how well it's shifted perception. As we know, it's not something that can just be done straight away. But the initial launch of the film went incredibly well. We had huge amount of impressions and engagement on social media, lots of people sharing it. When we launched the teaser, people were already messaging, asking for the full film. And we also benefited from a lot of earned media from it. We were in a lot of publications because people were just so surprised to see not only just a B2B ad taking this story, but a Hitachi ad. The main thing from this film, I mean, on social media, it's such a crowded place, and it was really that scroll stopping. People saw it and thought that is so unusual to see. And the first couple of seconds, we worked really hard to get that intrigue in the first three seconds of the film. So people were hooked, and we had a really strong view-through rate. The paid figures are still coming in, and it's really early in that campaign, but it's looking very promising. And yeah, we just hope to keep building and building on this to really shift that perception.
I think what I'll add to that as well is that, the first job of any communication, particularly with a big company, is to talk internally to your employees. And I think, and I hope it has galvanized everyone internally, not only for the different approach, the way we've approached it and the conceptual idea, but also the fact that it brings people together. And I think that's first and foremost, that's your first objective before it even gets, out into the public. And I think that's always a good sign, because at the end of the day, communication can make the difference between whether people feel proud to work for your company.
And straight away from launch, we had so many people from all across the business asked to use the film in various communications. We've had it open events. We've had it being used by partners. We sponsored an event recently which aimed to try and encourage young girls into STEM roles, and this film formed the base of that communication. So it's been used in so many different ways, more than just trying to shift that perception externally.
The fact that a company can make an ad where all the employees feel proud of and proud of the mission, that's a pretty great accomplishment.
Guys, I just want to massively thank you for coming on the podcast today and showcasing this incredible film. And thank you for listening to the People of Hitachi podcast. We'll be back soon with another exciting episode. To watch the full campaign video, please click the link below.